All right. Was it Tuesday? Tuesday, day before
Tuesday.
quarterfinals. Individual workouts are released. Chad, is this the fittest you've ever been?
That's a tough question. I would say 8 years ago, I feel like I was probably fitter, but I've definitely trained more in the past month or so than I've done in the past. That's for sure.
What was happening
I
8
feel
years
pretty
ago?
fit. I guess I was just younger.
Oh.
Younger, and I was drinking the Kool-Aid, so you get into it and you're going pretty hard. So,
Oh, damn. When did you first start this stuff?
Yeah, 10 years ago. My son's 9,
2014?
so yeah, 2014 sounds about right.
And about 2 years after that, you're the fittest you'd ever been until now. Okay. And now probably today you're in your taper mode.
Yep.
Get some sleep, rest the body.
Yep.
Have you already made a plan for how you're going to proceed with things? All 4 workouts on Thursday?
I think we got one Thursday afternoon, one Friday, 2 Saturday. That's the idea.
Save yourself 48 hours on the back end in case you need any redos.
No, we want to get it done for Saturday so we can celebrate Saturday.
Oh, yeah. The post competition festivities is Sunday, Monday. Some people might be doing redos, but Chad's confident in his first.
But I'm not in the 10%, so I'm happy that CrossFit opened up the gates, and I'm happy to be here.
Very nice. Barclay, did you do the Open? Are you making it to quarterfinals this year?
Yes and yes. I haven't done a CrossFit workout since prior to the Open. I haven't done a CrossFit workout since mid-September. I've just been lifting, and Brian, you and I have talked about that a little bit. I've just been lifting. And last year I was 89.5 percentile. So like I just missed out on quarterfinals. So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to lift because I suck at lifting. And so I've just been lifting. And so I was like, my rating's going to go down. I'm just going to rating my percentile is going to drop this year, but it's fine. I don't really care if I make quarterfinals because it's not going to be smart for me to do it anyways, because I haven't been doing CrossFit, and they ended up in like the 80th percentile or something like that. I didn't work out.
Are you going to do the quarterfinals workouts?
After. Absolutely not. Now I will appreciate them, and I might do them very slowly, but I can't sign up because the moment that 3, 2, 1 go happens, I'm going to go balls to the wall, and that will not be good for my body.
Well, yesterday, actually, I watched the CrossFit Jeopardy show that you and Chase put together, and it has remotivated me to do something I've done many times, which is read through the level 1 manual. And in the very first, maybe second page of the manual, it speaks exactly to that principle. That is, when you put the men on the starting line, they will die for points, and they will go to this level of intensity that you just can't really describe until you're in the moment. And so I totally get that. I just wanted to give you guys both the opportunity to celebrate being fitter than me during the Open, and regardless of what you were doing leading up to that, and anyone who wants to continue to make fun of me for not qualifying for quarterfinals, I can handle it. I might do the workouts, take a look at what they are. I've done the quarterfinals workouts every year, even when I only qualified the first year. But I always like to do them, or some version of them. A lot of times I end up doing the women's weights because the men's weights are just not be a great workout for me. They need to test those guys, and they're just stronger than me, which is great. But we're not talking about quarterfinals workouts today. We have Barclay on the show to talk about something that he and I together have been having conversations about. I feel like maybe the totality of the conversations we've had over the last 2 years are kind of leading to this. But prior to either of us knowing each other, at least formally knowing each other, this is something that you and I have both had thoughts about for a long time. When it comes to being able to rank and evaluate athletic performance in this field, it's something that I've been mulling around in my mind and experimenting with different ways to do it, probably dating back to 2016, 17. And Barclay, if you guys have not following Barclay on Instagram, this past 2 weeks, really, he's been starting to put out more and more information about what his database is capable of doing. When we talk about B.Friendly Stats or the B.Friendly Stats database, that's Barclay's work over close to 4 years now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 4 years coming up mid-July, 4 years.
Yeah, so getting close to 4 years since he started putting that together. And then, we've been basically trying to refine it over the past 2+ years since he reached out to me. And this model that we're going over today, we toyed around with a bunch of different names, but strength of field rating system is like, I think everyone can kind of understand what this is. And as you have maybe seen on Instagram, as Barclay published yesterday, all of the athletes ranked 90 and above, culminating with 99, which is the maximum rating. And the article that's up on B.Friendly Fitness, we're going to look at both of these things today. That gives a little historical look back. It very much has a feel of what you might be familiar with as the Madden rating from the NFL football game, where players are ranked. Maybe they have a total ranking, a speed, agility, strength, etc., based on their different strengths and weaknesses there. Thank you, Peter. And yes, the stats department in person. Now, Barclay's been getting some more publicity and FaceTime recently. I don't always know if he likes it or not, but he does a lot of work with a lot of people, as does Chad, and so this should be pretty cool. Anyway, Barclay is in the office. Yes, that's right. We didn't give him any wall decorations though. All he's allowed to do there is back squat, bench press, and crunch numbers.
Yeah, that's it. They give me internet access, but it's limited just to Google Sheets.
So, strength of field rating system, obviously in the CrossFit space, the CrossFit game system, they have a rating system. It's been talked about, scrutinized, whatever, over the past 12, 18 months since they announced it. And we know that it's limiting in a variety of different ways, but primarily it's limiting because it only evaluates the CrossFit Games season results. And we know through this sport that I was speaking with a high-level coach and athlete this morning, and they're taking the quarterfinals seriously because there's nothing guaranteed in this sport. You have to do the open, you have to do well enough to make it to the quarters, and the same process applies at quarters and semifinals. And only at those competitions can you earn points that could potentially affect your worldwide ranking, that then affects the strength of field distribution system. The opportunity to earn those points is equal for everyone in the open and quarterfinals, but very limited. Basically, everyone gets the same points within a small fraction. And then at the semifinals, it's distributed differently depending on where you live or are competing. You have more or less opportunity to earn points. And then the CrossFit Games, obviously, is where the most points are available, but it's reserved to a very few number of people who make it there. And we have this feeling that if 200 athletes around the world were allowed to do the CrossFit Games, that the 40 that actually get to do it every year would not finish in the top 40, that there would be some from the next group that would outperform them. And I think that most people would probably agree with that. And so what do you do with people like this? And that's where, to kind of round out the ranking system here, we decided a long time ago that we have to include some semblance of their off-season competition performance, because that is an opportunity that might not be available to everybody, but it's available to a lot more people than the CrossFit Games is for a number of different reasons. So kind of a little bit of intro there, but Barclay, anything you want to add to that before we look at anything else?
The one thing that I know we'll dive into again, so I might as well say it as many times as possible, is these are not predictions. These are ratings. These are meant to be as objective as possible, meaning these are supposed to be as data driven as possible. So I'd assume that we'll dive in a little bit into the data that goes into why the results are the way that they are. There's very little subjectivity associated with the system. So when someone says someone should be ranked higher or lower than someone else, that's great, but you can't put it on me necessarily, because there's no subjectivity from my personal point of view that's skewing the results. It's all data driven, and you can blame me for the formulas and the math involved in it, which we will not get into because that's unnecessary and we'll lose everyone. But as far as someone being ranked higher or lower than another person, I copy the results from what it tells me and I paste them here.
Yeah, and that was probably the most frustrating word. I could understand people asking a question. Why is Tia only a 92? That's totally a valid question. Colton should be higher. That is not a valid response. That is an opinion that has nothing to do with what we're doing. These are results-based ratings, meaning that those athletes showed up at competitions, did something, and based on what they did at that competition, there's an output that yields a ratings, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about how that process works. I think maybe
It's like
that's where
it's
we
like
should
the
start.
response to that, the response to someone saying, and this isn't like, I'm not trying to dig on anyone for saying like someone should be somewhere, but the response to that is tell that athlete to perform better if you want them higher. Like this is performance based. I don't control their final placement on the leaderboard. If you want them higher, tell them to place higher on the competitions.
Yes. And so Lynn asked an amazing question here, which I think this is probably where we should start, more or less. Did the type of off-season competition affect the results? For example, Wodapalooza versus Dubai? Absolutely. I think at this point, Barclay, we can probably just bring up the diagram that you kind of
Sure.
created this morning as a foundation or a base for the way to explain how this is actually working. So to put it broadly, the reason it's called a strength of field rating system is because and it's not just an athlete's performance in a competition, but it's relative to the athletes that they competed against. The debate over time that Barclay and I have had is, it's which one comes first. And so here you can see that all three of these things do have an impact on each other. But just like the CrossFit game system, we're only looking at a 2-year window of time. When I first started doing this, I originally had, and I'm talking about years and years ago, I had used a 5-year window of time. I whittled it down to 3. CrossFit uses 2, so we're using 2. And then it's basically based on the competition strength of field, which has to do with the athlete's rating when they sign up or participate in that competition, and then the points that they earn, how well they did in the competition, earn points based on their finish relative to the strength of field. Additions to that, Barclay?
Nope. That's if I start talking, I'll make it more complicated. So that's as simple as we can make it.
Yes, and we've had hours of conversations trying to get it as simple as possible. But basically, if you place 5th place in a competition that has the top 30 guys in the world, that's a lot better than placing 5th place in a competition where none of those 30 guys in the world are competing. And and the scale slides accordingly within there. So when you ask about Wodapalooza versus Dubai, we cannot say definitively every year one or the other has a higher strength of field. If you were just to look blanket statement at the strength at the Dubai this past season in 2023, you can see that that's a stronger strength of field than Dubai 2022, which makes sense because those athletes were invited as opposed to being forced to qualify. And Wodapalooza they'll probably have a pretty similar strength of field year to year with a few little undulations here and there. But in certain years, I would expect that Dubai's strength of field is higher, and in other years that Wodapalooza's is. And both of those strength of fields are going to be very high relative to most off-season competitions. Are you checking right now?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what goes into it. And then in terms of some ways for you guys to better understand it by, I think, relating it specifically to athletes. Is it really close?
Dubai, these numbers are going to mean nothing to the people listening, but the comparison still holds here. Dubai is 7.89 strength of field, and Wodapalooza was 7.90. So basically as close as you can get for this
for
year.
the 2023/24 off season.
That's correct.
Yeah. I would bet you that if you went and looked at 2022/2023 off season, that Wodapalooza strength of field is higher, relatively higher than Dubai's for that year. Which you can check if you want. So the first thing, one of the ways that we go about doing this, quite frankly, is trial and error. So I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, I sent Barclay this idea. I said, hey, here's 20 names or something. Historically, can we just make a graph or a chart of their rankings, basically quarterly? So we're doing checkpoints after the Open, after the qualifying stages to the CrossFit Games, which can change year to year, obviously, after the games themselves, and then at the end of the off season. So there's like the four they're not perfectly 3 months apart from each other. Those are the four checkpoints that we use every year. And so take any athlete that registers on the rating system, and you can say, oh, what was their rating after the Open in 2017? What was their rating after the qualifying stages in 2019? And we can pull that information. So for these athletes, we plotted out a chart or graph to look at that. And I started writing the article to accompany it, and I got to one of the athletes and I called Barclay. I was like, this can't be right. Like, something is missing. Something is off here. Kind of in the same way that you might look at it and have a question about a certain athlete. I had some questions. And while we're developing this system, we need to ask those questions. Okay, I don't want to say for sure this is wrong, but explain to me how Jeff Adler ends up with this rating at this time, whatever it is. And in the process of asking those questions, we were able to kind of check our work, or Barclay's checking his work, looking back and making adjustments as needed, and then try again. And over a period of doing this several times, just like you would do in any kind of a science experiment or whatever, you get to a kind of result that appears to make sense. And then when you have that, you continue to check. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? Keep asking questions, trying to poke holes in whatever the answer is. And I guess it was really last week where you were like, dude, I think we're ready. And it motivated me to pull back the article up. You updated everything according to all the most recent changes that were made. And here we are.
And all of the ratings can be seen after each stage of the season in a link in my Instagram bio as well. So you can go in there yourself and you can change it to Open 2016 and see who's ranked 99 and where Matt Fraser's ranked and where Noah Olson's ranked. And then you can fast forward to off season 2019, 2020, and you can do the exact same thing for both the men and the women. It's all available. And that's new in my bio. That was 2 days ago. Maybe it was yesterday. I don't know. But that was fun to make. So now it's, that first one right there.
Yeah, very cool to be able to provide that. And I guess the last thing I want to ask you before we look at the historical rankings is, how do you get onto how do you get a rating to begin with?
The easiest way is to finish in the top 2,000 in the Open and the quarterfinals. There's sort of an asterisk by that because I want to say that's the way to do it right now. And the reason that I say that's the way to do it right now is because Google Sheets has a maximum cell limit of 10 million. And if I go any higher than that, then I hit the cap on Google Sheets. So right now it's capped at 2,000 because that's the limitations of all the formulas and different tabs I have within separate spreadsheets. So the first way is the 2,000 in the Open or the quarterfinals. Ideally, I'm working on moving out of Google Sheets, and then I hope to expand that to arbitrary number, 10,000, whatever. Everyone, doesn't matter. The math still holds. And then the other way is to partake in one of these off-season competitions that we've registered as being valuable, worthwhile. And that's primarily based off of the best athlete or the frontline athletes at those competitions. So if there's a odd competition that Noah Olson goes to, like, we'll add the entire competition. You can't just add Noah, but you can add the entire thing, and that may take someone that was in 40th place and he's now got a rating because he was at that competition. Now maybe later on in time he gets in the top 2,000 and in the Open or the quarterfinals, and he would have made it on the ratings anyway. But he gets in a little bit early because he partakes in one of those competitions.
Yeah, which is actually great. Last fall, we really were kind of hammering down trying to get more of these off-season competitions in. And by the way, if you do run off-season competitions, if we've worked with you or not, and you have some historical data that can, just share the results over the last however many years, we can go backwards and add some of that stuff in. But the competition that always jumps off the page to me was the Basque Championships from last year, because you had a couple athletes, Adrian Moonweiler, Anjola Kai, maybe one or two others that were notable names in the sport that were competing there. So he put it in the database. But just like with the Pamplona Arena games that we covered, there were a lot of Spanish athletes that probably don't register on the scale otherwise. Maybe they're young guys up and coming, new to the sport, whatever, but they're good enough in their region or on the qualifier to get into that competition. Well, let's say there's 17 kind of random or unknown Spanish men in that field competing against those guys. And 5 years from now, one of those guys ends up making the CrossFit Games. We have that data going back to an original data point that was before he was relevant, because he happened to be competing in a competition with guys who were relevant at that time. And so that's where I think that there's potentially a lot of value. You can imagine if we had this database in 2018 and we had it dating back to, significant competitions around the world for 5 or 6 years prior to that we could pull someone like Laura Horvath's information and we could see, she was actually competing and winning these competitions, or she was close to this athlete at this time 3 years before we ever saw her at the CrossFit Games or whatever. Because a lot of athletes are like that, right? Even Matt Fraser has talked about it. I travel up and down the East Coast, cash 500 here, cash 1,000 here, whatever. But there was nothing like this ever existed back then.
Yes.
So, we are throwing around some big names, and that's what we'll do here first. So we're going to pull up the article that we published yesterday about what is the strength of field rating system with a historical look back. We selected 10 guys and 9 ladies from an 8-year study. So starts with 2016 Open, I believe. Yeah. And it comes all the way up to the present. Those are the athletes we selected. And it's a cool selection of athletes, I think, because some of them weren't competing yet at the start of this. Some of them aren't competing now. And a few of them took a break in the middle for a few different reasons. And so you kind of get a little bit of a sample of what an athlete who is emerging can look like, what an athlete that's kind of tailing off or retiring in their career can look like, what someone who takes a hiatus from competition looks like, whether that's for drug suspension in the case of Ricky Garrard, pregnancy in the case of Cara Saunders and Annie Thorisdottir. And then also we'll see athletes that were competing across this entire competition window and what that kind of looks like. So we started with the men, and this graph is kind of the summary
messy.
Of all of it.
It's messy.
Well, it's messy. I mean, these are some of the best guys, right? So a few of them, and the ones specifically that were competing for a majority of this time, are almost or relatively straight lines across the top. I mean, this is the bottom here is 75, but that grouping at the top is 95 to 100, which is, I mean, it's really difficult to get that rating. There's only a few people every year that are rated that high. And you see guys that I think Vellner's maybe one of the best examples. Maybe not. Oh yeah, he gets up there pretty quick and then he just kind of stays. Or you see Fraser in the light blue. It's until he retires, it's just almost a straight line, straight across. I think the purple line there is BKG that starts and ends above 95. I think has he been above 95 the entire time? Yeah, he's 95 now, which is the lowest that he's ever been. And that obviously speaks to that consistency that's somewhat unheard of, quite frankly. Below that, for obviously we're not going to be able to dive into every single one of these things, but there is this table here that shows the progression of the rating system for each athlete vertically. So you could pick any one there if you want to, what I was just talking about was BKG. So at the start of this study, he was already at a 96, having just come off a 3rd place finish at the 2015 CrossFit Games and probably some good off-season competitions. He bumps up to a 98 at the peak. He drops down. He bumps back up to 98, and he's currently at a 95, which is the lowest rating he's had since 2016, which, I mean, Barclay, that's pretty crazy.
It shows consistency. And that shows part of what people might be quick to judge about this model is because it's a 2-year window, you can drop, but it does take a little bit of time because in the current format of the CrossFit Games season, there are 10 total point potential windows for this system. There's the open, quarters, semis, games, off season for 2 years. So year 1, year 2, there's 10 total times to earn points. So if you just don't do off season competitions one time, you still have 9 of the 10 windows that you have points on. So someone like Justin Medeiros, who we'll likely dive into, with the games in 2023 and not participating in an individual off-season competition, right? He did Rogue, didn't he? No, he didn't do Rogue.
No.
Not having those points, he's still up there because he still has historical data that is significant to keep his ranking as high as he is.
Let's just stay on that point for a second. So, because I remember someone in the post had asked about how the Open weighs compared to other competitions. With it being very unique and maybe quarterfinals as well. And then also, what does happen if you miss any one stage of the season or the off season?
So for the first point with the Open weighing less, it does weigh less. It just does. It by the nature of the point values of all the athletes going into the competition, going back to that recycling graph that I threw together this morning. It's based off of the points that every athlete had going into the competition. So if you got 1,000 athletes that are now, if 1,000 in first place through 2,000th place in the Open is all new, they've all got 0 points. So that's going to bring down the strength of field for the Open for 2024 down greatly. So it already fixes itself based off of the athletes in the competition. We have sort of an objective rating of the strength of field for different competitions because of this model. So the Open is already less compared to Rogue, compared to the games, compared to quarterfinals, just because of the nature of the points that the athletes in that competition, and I say competition in quotes because we limit it to 2,000, affect the results of, or the points available for that competition. Thank you, sir. What was the second point?
So the second question was, how do you? I want to address the off season. First of all, what happens to an athlete like Justin Medeiros if, for some reason, no individual off season competitions are competed in?
You don't earn points. We can't award someone points for not doing something because we think that they could do something. You could say that about everyone. I mean, everyone. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people still talk about how impressive Rich would be if he still competed individually. Well, that doesn't mean that we get to award him points just because of the greatness that he's had in the past. Now, I think he would also still do very well, but this is supposed to be data-driven, performance-based. And if he's not performing in the competition, I can't award him points for it. Same with Justin not competing in the offseason. Same with Annie, Cara, and many others with pregnancies. Tia as well. Why is Tia 92? Well, she missed off season 2022 to 2023. She missed semifinals 23. She missed games 23. That's 3 of her 10 windows of opportunity to earn points. She's got 0s for them.
Yep. And if she hadn't done Rogue, then that would be an additional 0 in the off season 23-24. But because she did do Rogue, it probably helps her out quite a bit having not a very good finish there against a very good field.
I think she was 89 or 87 prior to this offseason, so post games 23, and then because of that second place at Rogue, she's now back up to a 92.
But if she didn't do that second place in Rogue, she would have dropped even lower than that 89.
Yeah,
because she would have done that. Her performance from the 2 off seasons prior, which was probably a 99 on its own, would have been removed with a 0, and instead her off season this year probably rates almost as high.
Exactly. Yep.
For Medeiros' case, obviously he had an incredible run, winning the games twice, winning Rogue twice. Doing great at semis. Quarters and Open were good enough to not have much impact, and he was sitting at a 99 from the quarterfinals in 2022 all the way through the semis in 2023. He takes and then even the 13th place at the games only dropped him down 1 point, but no off-season competitions in this past off-season dropped him from that 98 down to a 93. And so I think these are just really easy examples right now of what happened to compete in the off-season. And I hope that the explanation that Barclay gave about the Open was understandable, and it's because it was perfectly satisfactory in terms of explaining how that stage of the season basically self-corrects for itself.
And all competitions, they all correct for themselves based off of the athletes that are in that competition. So if you've got a larger field of athletes or a weaker field of athletes, your strength of field is going to be lower. You know, the ideal off-season competition to go to is Rogue, Dubai, Wadapalooza. They have high strength of fields. Even if you finish in the bottom half, you'll still get a lot of points compared to going to win some less competitive off-season competition.
And of course, keep in mind that this study that we're looking at here, these are obviously some of the best athletes over the past 8 years. But we see 3 cases here, Justin, Jeff, and Roman, that all had 0, and then boom, they pop onto the rating system in 2017 with a 72. But you can certainly have a rating lower than that, correct?
Correct. I think the lowest I've seen is a 28. It's hard for it to be, you know, it's not it's a discrete scale, meaning you get the whole numbers. Now you're 99, 98, 97. It's hard to go all the way down to 1 or 0 because those point values that you hold for that 2-year window, if you only do the open 1 year, you still have those points for 2 years. So the way that the math just works out, it's not going to guarantee that every single point value is filled from 0 to 99. Now, maybe with more data points, that becomes true. But again, being limited by Google Sheets, yell at Google Sheets, don't yell at me. The lowest I've seen is 28.
Working hard on educating yourself to move away from the Google Sheets.
Yeah.
So this is kind of I think this is a cool study that we did that helps. And if you're interested in kind of pursuing more, all of this information's here. If we scroll down in the article, I took each individual athlete and wrote a paragraph or less, just explaining the trajectory over that time. It's alphabetical there, just like the graph is. And so you can cruise through and check on some of your favorite athletes, or maybe the ones that you're most interested in. And then we have the similar thing for the women. Once again, here you'll see a variety of different athletes, some who were very good at the start of that competition or start of the window that we are evaluating, some who weren't on it. Well, actually, in this case, only Amanda Barnhart wasn't on it. Laura had just kind of popped on the scene. The rest of the women were already 93 or higher, as you see in that first column. And then, it's interesting to look for the women, especially in the last maybe 4 years, as you see a few of them bow out for retirement. Carrie Pierce, Kristen Holta, and a couple others, Cara, Annie, and Tia, who end up missing some period of time to compete. But in all of these cases, they're holding such high standings already that even, as Barclay explained, when you have those 10 data points and you drop 1 or 2 of them out, that they maintain a relatively high rating. I think that minus the athletes who end up retiring, like Carrie Pierce at this point is at a 0. But over the last, 2 years, she went from a 93, or I guess a 91, down to a 0 steadily as she got more and more zeros in her column there. But otherwise, it seems like all these women are not really dropping too much below 90. Like they get into the high 80s, 86, 87 maybe, and then when they start to compete again, they bounce back. Nothing to add.
No.
So this is I thought that this would be a nice historical look back. It's fun to do. It's cool to kind of evaluate and see some of these really surprising when I looked at them. Wasn't necessarily like, you kind of know that Katrin had this run that was like incredible, where she's finishing the top 5 or 6 of the CrossFit Games for however many years in a row. And she's also having these good off-season performances, obviously doing well. But she pretty much holds down a 99 or a 98 rating for like 4 consecutive years, which is one of the better streaks I mean, obviously you have the Tia and Fraser examples, but that streak of Katrin from 2016 to 2020 was really impressive. And it's something that you can see here. And then you kind of are seeing right now, Laura Horvath start to kind of make her move. She'd been really in the middle 90s, 95, 96 for a while. She bumped up to a 99 after the games in 2022, and she has been at a 99 ever since then. So she's currently putting together a nice little streak of her own.
Yeah, Chad just scrolled through. Now he's highlighting, but Chad just scrolled through the entire women's. If you didn't, I would just take a look at the rightmost column. That's Tia. You can see 99s all the way through. and then she goes down to a 95, drops to a 92, out of the top 90 or out of a 90th place. Yeah, 87. And now with that off season, she's back up to 92. So what we've basically done is added numbers to things that people sort of understand based off of performance. And that's I can't reiterate that enough. Yes, Tia should be, we would expect Tia to be higher if this wasn't performance based. I wouldn't just arbitrarily set Tia to an 87 on a scale from 0 to 99 if this wasn't performance based. But because it's performance based, it makes sense that her number drops. And it makes sense that she's jumped up 5 points just because of a second place at Rogue to replace some of those zeros that she's had in the last 2 years.
Very well said. So again, the article's on B.Friendly Fitness. Go check it out. Check out your favorite athletes. You can read about them in the written form. You can see them in a table. You can see them on a graph. So whichever way you're the best at kind of digesting that information is there for you to enjoy. But this is a historical look back that I think sets the stage for the post that Barclay put up yesterday, which is the current athletes who are rated 90 or above. And I don't know what the total number is, but it's not that many. Like it is
There's
pretty difficult.
31 men and 26 women currently.
So less athletes than will compete at the CrossFit Games this summer currently hold a rating of 90 or above. So, if, and we appreciate the comments, but when you're looking on there and you're saying, my favorite athlete should be ranked higher, or you're undervaluing this, listen, when if you're on this list, you're getting rewarded for being amazing at CrossFit. Like you've already proven it, and this is just showing where you rank. And obviously, even within the best in the sport, there is some degree of separation, and that's what this is showing here. But every athlete that's mentioned on these slides that we're going to go through is amongst the best in the world at this sport. Ironically fit. Could or is this to be used to allocate spots at semis and games?
Can I answer that?
Yes, for sure.
Is this currently? No. Could it? Maybe, but that wasn't my intention. When you think about rating systems, think about like what's the college football AP top 25? That's not a rating system that allocates who gets to go to the national championship. It's just that's more of a subjective rating, but it's still a rating that has no impact on the end result of who gets to go where. This is just supposed to be a snapshot in time based off of a 2-year look back of every single athlete's performance. How would we rank them on a scale of 99 based off of what they've done? And I think that the real benefits from this come from being able to compare an athlete in, let's say, North America West to an athlete in Europe that has not gone to the games. So we have no head-to-head data. We can compare them based off of the strength of fields that they've competed in. Another thing that I think this is valuable for in less elite competition is, imagine if you had local comps that started saying no one with a rating is allowed to qualify for this competition, or no one or only people that have a rating between 65 and 85 are allowed to compete in the RX division of this competition. There's a lot of things that we can do that CrossFit attempted to do with their levels system, their 1 through 10, maybe it's 0 through 10 rating system that kind of just got ignored.
Yeah, it was I'm wondering if Rogue should be set aside as a different category other than off-season, as by default the top 20 all go to Rogue. Thoughts on that, Barclay?
They get rewarded for going to the game. So yes, you could think of it as double rewarding them, but you could extrapolate that to semifinals for the games in the same way. They're getting double rewarded because they're getting points at semifinals for being at the top of semifinals, and they're getting rewarded for going to the games. Extrapolate it further, quarterfinals to semifinals, and extrapolate it further, open to quarterfinals. It works at every single stage of competition. Because Rogue is an off-season competition, and because the strength of field is varied based off of the 5 athletes that qualify from the queue, at least in recent years, that strength of field does vary from the games.
That actually reminds me of another thing I wanted to ask you. How do you account for athletes? Like let's just take an athlete who only competes at Rogue, that's their only off-season competition, like Tia-Clair Toomey, and compare it to an athlete who competed at Madrid and Rogue and Dubai, like Lazar Jukic?
This is the one point of subjectivity in my model. I've had varied feedback on whether it's a great subjective application or bad subjective application. I still reward them for multiple off-season competitions. I've ran the data with full allocation, so full points earned for every single off-season competition that they've done, and a percentage of those points. So the way that it's set up now is everyone gets 100% of their best off-season competitions points. Anyone that does 2 competitions,
Pause. For
Okay.
best, does that mean their best finish or their best finish relative to the competitive fields?
The competition that they would earn the most points in this model from. So that could be a 10th
So
at
Luka
Rogue.
Jukic might have
It
won
could be
4
a
off-season competitions that no one really relevant was at, but he placed 7th in Dubai, and that might end up being his best competition.
Correct. And that's where
Got
the
it.
strength of field comes into play as well. So if any athlete that does 2 competitions, they get 100% or all of their best competitions points. For that second competition, they only get 10%. Yes, it is a big drop off. For the third competition, they get 1%. So it keeps dropping by 10% for every single competition. So if you do 3 competitions, you get 111% of your total points, so that you still get rewarded for doing more competitions and performing well. Oh, hello. And getting rewarded for doing those competitions, but not so much that it shoots you to the top. Like if I did 100% of their points, then Karin Frey would be like 6th overall.
Right, because she won the French Throwdown, she won Madrid, she won Dubai, so she would be just banking these, even though they wouldn't be like a win at French Throwdown may be on par with an 8th place at Rogue. She's starting to stack up some pretty impressive points because of her frequency of competition.
Elena Karitala-Sanuhua has done 6 off-season competitions, both this off-season and last off-season. So I can't even imagine where she would be.
Right. And this is a conversation that Barclay and I have had many times. The benefit from doing a lot of off-season competitions is you're increasing your chances to have a really high scoring best performance. And of course, this is Halpin's favorite show. Actually, Chad, if we can pull up that other comment that you had from Halpin once the semis were set, I think, or it could be an assessment, one of those two. So yeah, these are things that we can absolutely do. We're not necessarily trying to interfere with the ranking system that CrossFit has or the distribution method that CrossFit has. I have very strong opinions about that based on things that I've done for many, many years. The stuff that Chase and Bill are doing to get with the programming and Halpin is, I think, involved with that, is kind of half of the best model that I think exists. And I would probably partner that with also each competitive region's performance at the previous year's CrossFit Games. I think that only isolating the game season like CrossFit does is limiting. I also think that only isolating the open and the quarterfinals is limiting. And I think there's a way to have a bigger picture view. But we're in this model here, we're factoring in off-season competitions, which none of those models account for. And so it's a little bit of a separate thing. I think it's more comprehensive. Those off-season competitions are definitely relevant. And so these ideas that Halpin's throwing out there, once the semifinal stages are seen, yes, we can absolutely tell you what is the average strength of field for every semifinal, or what is the total value of strength of field at every semifinal. The other thing that we can do, and Barclay has been doing this for the data that we've been using for off-season competitions, and those of you that have been following along really closely may have seen these numbers even at in Istanbul when we did the Eurasia Throwdown, or at the Reps Ahead when we were featuring some of those athletes there. It's the strength of field relative to the field itself. So we can see their worldwide strength of field, and then we can also pull and say against the North America East's women, this is how they would rank with themselves. This means I'm copying all picks in Heat 1, Lynn. So, hey, yeah, absolutely. Use it to your advantage. I mean, it is sports, though, and that's why they play the games. There's always going to be surprises. But yes, great observations from Mike about ways that this could be applied. I don't know, Barclay, did you have any plans on doing something similar or additional this year?
Keep doing what I've been doing with you on these ratings. I've got some other
Because I
stuff.
pay the big bucks for it.
Yeah, because you pay me huge dollar amounts.
Thank you. I think you're muted now after taking those out. You just got to turn the microphone back on.
There's other things coming down the road or down the pipeline that will include the strength of field rating. So this isn't meant to be a one and done. Hey, look what I did over the last 6 months type of rating system. This is supposed to start being incorporated into how we talk about CrossFit. And I think that at the very bare minimum, if you, and by you I mean anyone, goes to a CrossFit competition, you bring someone new to CrossFit, they have no idea what's going on, and you start talking, well, Jeff won the games last year. Well, okay, they don't really know what that means. But if you say Jeff's a 99 on a scale of 0 to 99, they say, okay, I know what a 99 means. So Dallin's a 95, so he's up there, but he's not as good as Jeff. Well, yeah, based off of his recent performance, I would say that that's true. It starts to contextualize for those that are invested in CrossFit and those that have no idea what's happening in CrossFit, an idea of what's happening on the floor and what's expected to happen.
Just like the Bible, the base layer is good for most people, and you can go as deep as you want and spend a lifetime studying it too. Okay, that was for you, Mike. Am I going to Rogue? Yes, I will plan to be at Rogue this year. Will I come to your tent to use the charging stations? Maybe. Can the stats on the games profiles have use here if they were updated? I mean, that's I'll let Barclay answer, but that's a huge if.
I mean, anything can be utilized. It's just I've just chosen to use the strength of the field and athletes' overall finishes at that competition. There's more data points involved in that. I mean, the individual data points are in the hundreds of thousands, but the only two true data points that I'm using for this model is really overall finish and strength of field. I can incorporate anything else. This one just works. And the simpler, something complex versus something simple that yields the same results, you could always take the simple one. Absolutely not, Ryan. Oh my goodness. I would be past that.
I was waiting for you to see that one. Do you want to elaborate?
I just pulled it from I've never even played them actually, but Madden football video games, they go the pinnacle is a 99, and so I said, sure, I'll just keep 99.
Yeah, it kind of it just leaves. I don't know, like the 100 is it's not attainable.
It's 3 digits. Why can't we just keep it at 2?
That's what I was waiting for you to say. Can we come up with a cool, catchy name, Wad Zombie? We have been working on that exactly, and been met with resistance in terms of some of our pursuits. I, for sure, am still open to the idea of having a cool, catchy name. Barclay obviously would need to be supportive of it, and I would say it's not out of the realm of possibility. There still is a good chance that we will do that at some point. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Yes. If you do have a great idea for a name, feel free to send it our way. We will consider it. We have thrown around a bunch of different names, and like I said, we don't have one at the moment, but potentially will. Yes, and this is Lynn, basically what that article does for the 19 historical athletes on there, and within one paragraph, or just scanning the column, you can see the ups and downs. In the paragraph of writing, I dive in a little bit to why you see those changes in each athlete based on performance or a pattern of performance over a period of time. But yeah, it's for a storytelling model, it's great. You could obviously see, if you imagine an ESPN production where they would, take a look at these 2 athletes' trajectories over the last 2 seasons, and you see these data points and whatever, you see one going up, one going down, and that could be a justification that an analyst used to say, this is why I think this is finally the year where X athlete beats Y athlete, because look at the trends that they've been, whatever. So great observation there.
For Lynn's point, I mean, that's it. That's the point of it. is to be able to do that. Right now, with the levels system that CrossFit has, you're going to stay at 10 regardless of whether any games athlete's going to be a 10. There's not much data there. You're a 10 throughout your entire career until you decide to stop competing.
I think that even if you made quarterfinals, you were a 10.
Okay. Yes. So that's the entire point, is to have that storytelling capability, basically just using an extra digit, going to 2 digits. Now I have the data to go further, to go the 10th place, the 100th place, but just for ease of understanding and for visual appeal, just the whole number is nice for right now.
Lynn, last question down here was this what I used when I did the eras analysis? No, it is not. Those were much more subjective. And the Ranch era, I just did it on my own. In the Madison and Carson eras, I did it with John Young. And you could have a kind of a live look in the way that we kind of determined that, but it was not based on purely data, the way that Barclay is evaluating this. And I would still say, as I think we're going to get to now, when we look through these slides of 90 through 99, I would still say that based on the ratings alone is not going to be, while it might be you might do very well in terms of your Heat 1 picks or whatever, it's not exactly how I would necessarily rank the athletes if I was looking forward, because there's other variables involved in that. And obviously there are these trends that we're kind of referring to. But
and the best example of that is Tia at a 92 right now. I think everyone's expecting her to be top 3, if not winning the CrossFit Games in every single competition that she does until she decides to stop competing. That doesn't mean that you should.
It depends on her hips, actually. She was talking about those recently.
She's getting old. She's still young.
Oh, she had a baby.
Well, yes, there's more to it. I understand, but I can't quantify that at the moment. Now, maybe I should get like a hip factor or a baby decreaser on their rating. Maybe I could work on that next.
Nick, I will tell you privately what we were wanting to do with the naming of this later on. But what I want to do now, we're going to go through the rankings 99 down to 90. If you guys are watching and you have a question about a specific athlete, why they're here or something like that, or something looks off to you, put it in the chat and we'll try to address it. Otherwise, we're just going to kind of go through, and Barclay and I will make observations about each rating system here. I would say that as far as the 99 goes, Adler and Horvath, not only did they both win the games last year, they've been pretty good over the past 2 years. And despite not winning the games, Vellner shows up here, which may be surprising to some.
But it's because of his consistency, for one, and 2, his off-season competitions, because that's when he gets a lot of points. Where's Vellner?
Yeah.
Vellner won Rogue this past year, and he got 4th at Wadapalooza. And last year he got 4th at Rogue and 3rd at Wadapalooza. Jeff only did Rogue this past offseason, where he got 2nd, and that was the only offseason competition that he did. So that's where that percent decrease total points earned comes into play, is Vellner gets rewarded for doing multiple offseason competitions, but he doesn't get rewarded to the point that it would bump Jeff down to a 98, because then we'd have a lot more disagreements from people in the comments on the results having reigning fittest on earth as a 98.
Sure. And I mean, of course, maybe if he did 0 off-season competitions, then he would be,
then there'd be a different story for sure.
1 or 2. But because he did at least show up at 1, did well there, he maintains that. And those are, by the way, some of the questions that Barclay and I have been asking over the last however long we've been doing this. When we look at this stuff and we say, why is that happening? It doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel right. And then we'll look at the data. We'll say, okay, what if we change this? Does that seem better? How does it affect other things? It's been quite a process, as you can imagine, to get here. But seeing these 3 athletes at a 99, that checks out for me. Let's take a look at the 98s. Again, I would say here, no surprise at all for Roman or Emma. Maybe a little bit surprising Magawa shows up here.
I mean, not to me. I'll get all my data for her specifically, but she's a lot more consistent than people think. and you get rewarded for a lot of consistency in this model. You don't get rewarded for one-hit wonders, I'll call them, as much as consistent performances.
One-hit wonders. You have the Jeopardy game in mind.
Yeah, that was a callback. Okay, Gabby. So the competitions coming into this result for Gabby are 3rd in semifinals 2022, 8th at the games, 5th at Rogue, 14th in the Open 2023, 6th in quarters. She won semifinals in Europe, 4th at the games, 4th at Rogue, 2nd at Wadapalooza, and 43rd in the Open this year. She's a 98.
Yep, very impressive. Obviously, the 14th and 48th in the Open still score very highly. Some of the comments here are surprised to see Emma Lawson there. So if you want to pull up her data.
She won the Atlas Games, 6th at the games, 3rd at Rogue, 3rd in the Open, 10th in quarters, 4th at North America East, 2nd at the games, 3rd at Rogue, 46th at the Open. So she beat Gabby in both games, 6th to 8th and 2nd to 4th. And she got 3rd and 3rd at the Rogue Invitational to Gabby's 5th and 4th at the Rogue Invitational. However, Gabby also had the additional points from getting 2nd at Wadapalooza. They're neck and neck.
Yep. And when you pull, you see the 98 and you can have a question mark, but when you are able to pull back and look at that performance over the 2-year window, I think that those numbers speak for themselves. Let's go to Halpin's question here. Similar to an athlete possibly being number 1 on the worldwide ranking. So he's referring to the CrossFit Games worldwide ranking and not winning the games or vice versa. They've basically modeled that so that the winner of the games has to be first. At least that's kind of what they've stated it to be. Can the winner of the games not be the highest rating on this scale?
Yes, I haven't done the math, but it's certainly possible. I mean, we could take it to the extreme. Someone gets 2000s in the Open, so they get points for that. They get 2000s in quarterfinals. They get points for that. They get the last qualifying spot at their semifinal, and then they win the games. And then they don't do an off-season competition. You'd probably presume that they would be like a 90.
Well, that's an extreme. That is a very extreme in terms of one season. But really what could happen is someone who's never competed in the sport of CrossFit before, but finds out about it, does it, happens to be freakishly good at it, shows up in their first Open, qualifies for quarters, semis, wins the games. But they only have 4 data points out of 10. There's no chance that they're going to be a 99 yet.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Also true.
CJ, are the events that factor into the rating period weighted in any way for recency, even within the 2-year window? So, for example, would a second place in 2023's CrossFit Games weigh higher than a second place at 2022's CrossFit Games?
Yes, and it does so naturally. Again, I tried to be as hands-off in the results as possible. The only thing I touch is really that decrease in the multiple off-season competitions of 10% decrease. Going back to that circle graph that Chad has, the points that you earn at the competition go into your total. Therefore, the total points goes into your next competition, and it keeps going around in a circle. So every single additional competition, every single additional stage of competition, the point values, the strength of field continues to increase. So it naturally weights more recent competitions more. Now, how much it weights them is based, again, off the strength of field of those competitions.
Let me throw this one at you. I don't think I've ever actually asked you this before. Was the women's field at the 2023 CrossFit Games diminished in terms of the value because Tia wasn't there relative to the previous year when she was there?
I can give you objective. I can't give you relative, though. And the reason I say that is because I can right now I have the values for 2023 games. 2023 games for the women. Yeah, this is the women. It's a 4.29 strength of field. Again, I understand for the listeners that doesn't mean much, but it was a 4.29. Last year was a 1.72. Now, that isn't to say that the games this year was 3 times as competitive. Let's cut this shit. Let's go. That isn't to say that the games this year is 3 times as strong, because there is the entire off season. There's the open, there's quarterfinals, and there's the entire semifinals that go into that value. I'm into that rating. I'm still working on building out a appropriate way to get the relative strength of fields so that we can compare across years. I have not done so yet, though.
Yep, and we have talked about that. So those numbers are constantly growing. Like you can hear him say that last year's games was a 4.29, but that Dubai and Wadapalooza were a 7.89 and 7.90 because it's all building on itself. But then there's a way that he basically scales it all back to within this 99 system. And I guess maybe I shouldn't have asked that because I thought that there was a potential to go down that road, but I guess in a more theoretical model, if you have someone like Tia-Clair Toomey that's such a dominant athlete that obviously is going to bring up any strength of field that she enters into, does removing her from the competition have a dramatic effect on that competition strength of field?
Of course it would. But it does depend on the strength of the other athletes at that competition. If you've got a competition with 20 athletes, all of them are ranked, pick your number, 75, and then you've got Tia at that competition. And then you've got another competition where Tia's not at it and everyone else is ranked 75. Well, the average for that competition with everyone ranked 75 is 75. And the competition with Tia is going to be something like 77, 78. And 2 points, 3 points, that's a pretty significant difference in terms of strength of field.
But if you're talking about the CrossFit Games, where you also have the Horvath at 99, Lawson at 98, Magawa at 98, etc., all these other strong athletes, then taking out one athlete that's ranked 97 doesn't have as big of an effect on the field. It's still going to be a very competitive field. So great example there. All right, let's take a look. Let's scroll to the 97s. No Colton Mertens there, but we do have some pretty impressive athletes. Brent Fikowski and Daniel Brandon. Again, I would say that you may not think about them as being the third or fourth on any ranking that you would necessarily do if you're projecting forward, but very consistent over this 2-year time period. Probably in the case of Fikowski, the only bad marks would be those open marks, and they're still not that bad. And Daniel Brandon, I mean, maybe if I was guessing, I would say it's probably her off season that's the lowest, just because she's having like 8th place finishes at Rogue instead of 4ths or something like that.
She got 9th in 2022 and 7th in 2023, but she also got 3rd at Wadapalooza this year, which probably bumped her up from 96 to a 97.
Yeah, so there's an example of competing in the second off-season competition, getting that extra % that can make maybe a little bit of a difference at these high rankings that have small margins for error. Oh, my buddy Joe Niels is right there in the background of that Fikowski picture. Nice. Good dude right there. All right, so 96. 3 athletes at 96. Both of the reigning fittest people from USA checking at 96. Alex Kazan, Ariel Lowen, Dallin Pepper. Comments or thoughts about these guys?
No, I mean, I'm going to be repetitive here. It's like with every single additional point that we take off, we're 97, 96, etc. It's like it's going to be similar to the results at the games or athlete or people's predictions. Like this is meant to be a performance. It's supposed to be based off of athlete's performance, which even subjectively done, we all use to do our ratings, our rankings in Heat 1, who we think we're going to win in just casual conversation. So there shouldn't be many things that really stick out to people as being odd, because one of the competitions that comes into play here is the games. So this should sort of mirror, not exactly, but it should mirror the games results.
And yeah, great. The interestingly enough to me, so we had 3 people at 99, 3 at 98, 2 at 97, 3 at 96. When we dropped down to 95, now we have 6 people. So twice as many athletes at this rating, just 1 spot less as we saw at any of the 4 previous. And all of them are men.
Yeah.
That was probably when I looked through this yesterday, with slide to the 95s there, Chad. That was the thing that really surprised me the most, is that no women checked in at a 95, and we had a pretty dense group of guys here.
And that's just to say that not every point value needs to be filled with an athlete. I'm not setting athletes at different values. It's what's the result based off of every single athlete's total points compared to the athlete with the most points. So it should make sense to people. The athlete with the most points is the 99 rating. Everyone else is based off of that athlete's number of points. So if you've got 100 points and a bunch of people are right at the top, and then you've got a bunch of people in the middle, you've got this little gap here, you wouldn't expect on a sliding scale to have athletes in that point value range.
I actually thought this was a kind of a cool grouping of athletes, because if you know these athletes well, you'll know that over the past 2 years, they haven't always had competition results that would be maybe ideal. Some of them were obviously really good, or they couldn't be up here at all. But each of these guys, whether it was BKG finally missing the top 10 last year, I mean, Hopper missing the first cut altogether, Chandler Smith having some ups and downs, Quant, same thing. It seems like every other season. But when you have that 2-year period of time, what I would say that what this group really highlights is the fact that you can have a relatively bad finish and still offset it because of the fact that there are those 10 data points.
And because with the next stage of competition, you can bounce back more so than the points that you lost with the prior stage, because the new stage is worth more relative to the last stage. Like Jason Hopper, yes, 31st at the games, but he bounced back with a 7th at Rogue. So he earned a lot of points at Rogue, which is the strongest offseason competition. He got 7th there.
Correct. And so there's the guys at 95, dropped down to 94. I thought we might see a ton of women here. We see 2, one of whom is not competing this season. And so obviously we'll start to drop down the rankings, which is Emma Carey and then Karen Frey, who you mentioned earlier. Karen, maybe for athletes, for fans in North America, we talk about this every time she comes up. At the games, she doesn't seem to have her best. She's never had her best. She had really poor performance relative to everything else she's ever done at Rogue. But her off-season competitions and her performances at the European semifinals are really good.
2022-2023 off-season, she won Dubai. She won, my apologies on pronunciation, the Marbella Championship. Mm-hmm. First at the Athens Throwdown. This off-season, first at Dubai, first in Madrid, first in Pamplona Arena Games, 17th at Rogue, first in French Throwdown.
Right. And she's not, it's not, as we talked about earlier, she's not getting full credit for winning all those competitions, but she's getting that 111.11 percent. So she's kind of maxing out the percentage available, and it's enough competitions where at least one of those, the wins at Dubai primarily, are showing up as really high points earners, being supplemented by fairly high points earners, where the 17th at Rogue actually doesn't count against her very much. If that was her only off-season competition, it would count against her a lot more. Anyway. And then you got some guys on here, Crouch, who's on the ascendancy, Jona Koski, no surprise to see him with a high rating, and Ricky Garrard, who is, of course, as always, is one of the more interesting data points to study, because even last year he missed a couple of competitions due to injury.
He's coming back. He's where's Ricky? This offseason he got 5th at Rogue. He won Wodapalooza and he got 2nd at Dubai. That makes up for the fact that he did not have any points in semifinals or the games in 2023. So he's on the ascent. Those 2 data points will be around until off-season
2026.
Games
25-26.
Games 25. Once Games 25 is finished, those 2 data points will be out. So if he's got 2 full healthy years, he'll have a very, very high rating. But that isn't to say that he can't achieve a very high rating with those 2 zeros in his repertoire for the next 8 stages of competition.
And I like that. There's when I do ratings of like best athletes of all time, if they haven't competed at 3 CrossFit Games, I don't even consider them for the ratings. Right. It's too small of a sample size. So that's why we still have the 2-year model. That's why you can choose to skip a stage of competition, and as we see here, you're not dramatically affected by it. but it even for the best athletes in the world, I think I can't remember if Ricky came in 1 or 2 on Spin's media poll most recently, but this is a guy that people think can win the CrossFit Games. The 94 rating is not a representation of the fact that we don't think he can win the CrossFit Games. It's a representation of the fact that he hasn't had consistent competitions over the past 2 years. And, I think that it stands to reason that if you want to be the best, or if you want to have the highest rating, you need to have a consistent excellence across a period of time. Mm-hmm. Mike helping with the Power Rangers reference. Am I right? Is that a Power Rangers Megazord? Where we combine powers using the rating system to create a top 100 worldwide and then allocate region game spots to each semifinal. I don't think that
Halpin and I can do that offline. We don't need to do that.
No. Yes. Anyway, all right. Scroll down to 93. There's going to start to be more and more athletes in these 90 as we go lower down on the rating systems. Barclay can speak to that a little bit, but here we do see Raptis, who is one of the athletes that people were asking about yesterday. So maybe we can look at her.
I think they just said where they were looking for her. Now I can still explain, but I don't think that they were upset. I think they were just wondering where she was.
They saw her on the list, and then that was all they needed to know.
That's it. They just needed to see her
the list. Raptis is in there. We're good to go.
Exactly.
But Raptis, Rolf, and Powers are the women that show up here. Hoste, Matthew, and Medeiros. What do we got for Alexis?
Alexis was 2nd at Syndicate Crown 2022, 10th at the Games, 8th at Rogue, 75th in the Open, 13th in quarters, 5th at North America East, 6th at the Games, no off season, and now 109th in the Open.
Which is probably not really having much of 109th in the Open is still good, or is that going to have a negative impact on her?
No, it's not. It's more a positive impact than it is a negative impact because we allocate points out to 2,000. So if you take that down to 20, then she got first. I'm just dividing by 10 there.
Right. Good. Just good for people to see. I mean, when you read out all the stats like that, obviously for almost everyone, the Open scores are going to be the lowest because there's so many people competing. But it still might actually be one of their better performances potentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Alexis would be a lot higher. And I understand this isn't, by no sense is this a diss, but she would be a lot higher if she had done Rogue. I understand there are other, there was an extenuating circumstance, but I'm glad that no one has upset with her rating. But
she's quite frankly, she's in a very similar position to Justin Medeiros, right? They have done very well over 9 data points and have 1 bad data point. I mean, and Justin's 1st and 13th at the Games are probably scoring very similarly to Alexis's 10th and 6th.
Yes.
And that's what you see as a result here. So these are the kind of questions that we'd evaluate. We look at athletes that have relatively similar results at the Games, and then we say, okay, well, how does the offseason affect them? How did their semifinals? Because some of these athletes sneaking into the Games, but then do really well once they get there, or the other way around. And Alexis and Justin just happen to be a pretty good case study there. Slide down to the 92s. We got our biggest grouping yet, 8 athletes, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women here, as opposed to 3 men. Again, Christine won't be competing this year. Tia is going to be climbing back up, of course. An interesting group here. I mean, these are very good athletes, but you have, Danny Spiegel missed the Games last year. She still finds her way onto here. Tia didn't compete at the semis or the Games. She's still up in the 90s. And I like that. Like it allows an opportunity for missing a part of the season or a misstep at a certain stage of competition to be offset by the fact that these have been really competitive athletes for a long time.
Agreed.
I think, is this the moment everyone's been waiting for? There he is. Colton Mertens, 91. Alongside Henrik Eppelainen, James Sprague, Travis Mayer, Ulda Supernex, and Will Morad on the men's side. 3 women in this tier, Rebecca Widdison, Annie Thorsdottir, Amanda Barnhart. And, there were some people saying that Colton, they would maybe like to see Colton ranked higher or he's being undervalued here. I don't really think so.
I mean, you have to consider that he didn't do an off-season event in 2022, 2023. So he got 30. He was 5th at the Granite Games. Then he got 32nd at the CrossFit Games. Did not do an off-season competition. 3rd in the Open, 58th in quarters, 8th at North America West, 18th at the Games. This offseason, he got 13th at Wadapalooza, 2nd at Crash, and he got 19th in the Open. So come the Games this year, he'll have, or come off-season this year, if he does an off-season competition, off-season event, then he'll have 10 total data points. Right now, he only has 9. So yes, he has a 91. It is relative to his consistent finishes at the Games of 18th and 32nd, as well as strong off-season competitions. However, he didn't have any off-season competitions last off-season, which is still to his detriment.
I think Wad Zombie is factoring in a different rating scale where he accounts for his trash talking capacity, and in that stage scale, he's absolutely is 99.
It does, but I can't quantify that, so it's not in my rating system.
No, and Colton Mertens I feel a conundrum about Colton Mertens this year because each of the last 3 seasons that I picked him to miss the games, he made it. So I don't know, man. Maybe I just pick him to miss again and take all the flack for it and hope that let it ride.
And then hope that he qualifies.
Yeah.
Be happy that he shows up. I mean, that'd be fine with me.
No, and Colton, look, I mean, he's. I think that was great that you were able to articulate the fact that his off-season competitions this year have been very good, and that's affects the rating system compared to a season where he didn't do any off-season competition, which also affects the rating system. And those are the things that I think sometimes with a really short, people have short memories these days. They remember the last thing that they saw, and Colton's obviously coming off of a good off-season and his best games performance. And he's just a really likable guy. So you want to see him do well and you want to cheer and root for him. But again, this is objective based on the data, based on what he has done over the last couple of years. And when, if he continues to have a season this year like he had last year, then this rating will go up because he'll have better performances and more performances. 1
year ago, following Open 2023, Colton was an 87. So his performances reflect what he's done his rating reflects what he's done over the last year, where he's gone from an 87 to a 91, but he's still holding 2 zeros for the next 3 stages of competition. I would expect him to skyrocket on the ratings once those 2 drop off, just because he's been so consistent, but still with a slightly upward trajectory.
Correct. And then lastly, we have the 90s, biggest group here. I think that's 12 total people that are at the 90 rating system. And again, there's 31 and 26, I think, men and women that are a 90 or above. So this is a very rare company to even be a part of. I would say just at a first glance for me, most surprising to see on this list is actually Sydney Wells. I think that she often gets a little bit maybe not credited for how good she's actually become in a short amount of time.
Sydney's competitions that contribute to her current rating are 16th at the Granite Games. She didn't make it to the Games that year. That was 2022. She got 12th at Wadapalooza, 138th in the Open, 27th in quarters, 7th at North America East, 28th at the Games, 7th at Wadapalooza, and 146th in the Open. So they're all relatively high finishes or good finishes. But more than anything, they've been consistent finishes, and you get rewarded the most for consistency in this model than, again, one-hit wonders.
Right. And then on the maybe the antithesis to that, we see a guy like Guy Maieros, who missed out on the Games last year, but still has managed to hold on to a 90 rating.
Yeah, Guy won Copa Sur in 2022, 10th at the Games, 11th at Wadapalooza, 421st in the Open, 42nd in quarters, 3rd at South America semifinals, didn't go to the Games, bounced back with a 9th at Wadapalooza, and a 34th in the Open. So all this is to say is, yes, missing or holding a 0 for that entire two-year window, it does hurt you. But you can make up for it, relatively speaking, with the next stage of competition.
Yes, and as CJ points out, Jacqueline Dahlstrom also missed the CrossFit Games last year. Small margin, but retains the 90. And Wad Zombie asked a question here, Barclay. I know that this post only goes 90 through 99. on the rating. Obviously, there's a ton of athletes also rated in the 80s. When I don't have that list in front of me currently, but when you look at that list, is there anyone, male or female, that jumps out to you that you're like, I would have maybe, if I didn't know, I might have expected them to be in the 90s?
Go check out the list yourself.
There it is. Everyone can look at it, right? You can go onto the Instagram.
Everyone can look at it in that header row where Open 2024 is. You should be able to change it yourself. Chad, can you try that for me? Just to verify that that's true.
Change what?
Yeah, click that drop down. Yeah, select anyone you want. So through the games 2015, if you scroll all the way back up to the top, the 99
when
rating
changes it. It also changes for me.
Changes for everyone. Yep. So you can fight with people. That's fine with me. I don't care.
Oh wow!
So the 99 rating through the games 2011. Where are we? Open 24. Yeah.
Oh.
So you can filter on whatever you want. You can see how the ratings change. I have 4 different tabs. I have men and women ranked and men and women alphabetically, just so you can search either way that you want. But you can go check it out for yourself.
I'm just looking in here. Some of the top ranked men that are just below 90: Alex Catoulis and Luke Parker at 89, Vigneault, Anyola Kai, Cole Sager, Jack Rosema, Kalian Souza, Tudor Magner, 88. Austin Hatfield actually comes in at 87, along with Cole Grieshaber. That's interesting to me, that Hatfield, who hasn't made the games, has a rating system to Grieshaber, who has done it twice. But then again, you can think about Cole not really being very active in the offseason and Austin having a pretty good offseason. And that might be the place where those kind of level out.
Yep.
On the women's side, the 89s are Abigail Domit, Andrea Solberg, Bethany Flores, Claudia Gluck, Ellie Turner, Emma McQuaid, Fee Sagafi, Jamie Simmons, Katrin Davidsutter, and Turi Helgedotter all at an 89, just barely missing out. I would say that there are probably some surprises there. Not surprising that they're close, but maybe you would have thought that with the season Katrin had last year that she might have snuck back into the 80s. Emma McQuaid's been, obviously she didn't have a great season last year, but she's generally good. I don't think she did any off-season competition, which is probably what weighs her down. And then the 88s, you have Elena Caratalo, who you mentioned, Freya Moosberger, Rebecca Fusile checking in pretty well there, and Shelby Neal. Very cool.
I don't know that off the top of my head, helping. My apologies.
The lowest 2024 games athlete. Oh my goodness. Bailey Rail, 86. Kelly Baker, 85. Victoria Campos, 85. Wells didn't make the games last year. Emily DeRoy, 84.
Jake Douglas is an 82.
So still above 80, but again, Jake Douglas, I don't know if he did any offseason competitions this past year. I think he did a team of 3 at the Down Under. So, that would be like, those are some variables that can obviously affect the rating system if you don't do offseason competitions. So very cool. Well, articles up on B.Friendly Fitness if you want to look at some of the historical stuff. Obviously, there's an Instagram post we just went through. This is very cool that Barclay has linked to this, so you can go and look at it through his Instagram there. And again, if you're not following him recently, he's been putting out some really cool stats. We've been reposting most of them on B.Friendly Fitness as well. He's just, it seems to me like you're very much just targeting quarterfinals because that's the stage of the season we're in, and maybe we'll see similar at semifinals in a month.
Yeah, so with quarterfinals this weekend, once the leaderboard is finalized, make sure to check back for updated rankings. It won't change very much, but quarterfinals results do impact. It's a stage of the season, so come back and see who's 99. It won't change, but see where your favorite athlete has gone, if they've earned an extra point or if they've gone down a point.
Hello, Jonathan Ortega. I'm sure we'll be seeing you on the road shortly.
And I got other stuff coming down the road with these ratings, as I mentioned earlier. Some stuff that other people have given me the opportunity to support them on something that they've done. We'll get a revitalization of something that people are interested in or have been interested in, and there will be more of it coming out. And you can see the strength of field ratings available on said thing, and other things coming down the pipeline. So hopefully that this is something that sticks around. It's obviously my intention that this doesn't just get thrown to the side. This is one of my babies. I've probably had 4 or 5 babies that I've been handling and growing and building out over the past 4 years. One of them is the database itself, which to my knowledge is the largest in the CrossFit space for elite individuals specifically. Got some other stuff that hopefully this year we got the opportunity to incorporate into the broadcast, whether it be at semifinals or at the games, that I've had some opportunity to present to some people last year. Maybe this year is the breakout year for that. But this is the first one that I've really gotten the nerve up to show people. So I hope that people enjoy it. Please let me know what complaints you have, and I can see if they are valid. And if they are, how to incorporate them into the system to continue to refine it, because this is by no means finished. This is by no means finalized, but it is something that I'm happy to put my name on in its current state for sure.
Well, I think you did a great job explaining it. I hope that the balance we were able to present of some look backs with some of the best athletes, and then also taking a look at the current field is helpful in terms of answering some of the questions that people might have had. And as Barclay's been saying, go check it out for yourself. You can scroll through and see there are a lot of athletes with ratings on there, a bunch in the 80s and 70s, maybe some people that you know or are rooting for or would like to see do well or just learn about. And then, if you think that there's any modifications, improvements, questions, Barclay's really open-minded to that kind of stuff. And he will almost always take it back and do a thorough evaluation of whether there's any merit to it or not. Sometimes he just tells me to shut the fuck up.
Normally nicer than that. But
and yes, that's it. I think that'll do it, unless you had anything else, Barclay.
Nope, I'm good.
So that's a strength of field rating system. Like we've been saying, we think there's a lot of value to it. We think that it can help to with storytelling to help simplify some of the introduction of new people to this space, and we hope to be able to apply it in some of those ways. Relevant competitions coming up soon. Otherwise,
if you are a competition organizer and you want to confirm, or if you believe that your competition should be in the database and contribute to the rating system, reach out to me, ideally with that leaderboard, so that I can, 1, verify that I don't already have it, and 2, add it if it is appropriate to add it. That would really help grow the sport of CrossFit, because at the very least, I'm consolidating the entire sport of CrossFit in one space.
Yes. And if you know a competition director who you think would love to know that doesn't listen to a lot of podcasts, let them know. Get in touch with us. We'll get you on there if it makes sense to. Thank you, Chad, for running the back end. Excellent job. I don't know how you turned the Instagram comment into a scrolling thing along the bottom, but we're going to have to teach Patrick how to do that. And, the pull up from
circles and lines.
Circles and lines. That's what he's good at. Chad Mueller. And also we'll look for you guys on the quarterfinals leaderboard this week. I might do the workouts just to see how many people who qualified ahead of me I can actually beat. Probably at least Barclay.
Don't put your money on me, because I'm not doing them, at least not this week.
All right. Thank you guys for stopping by. Thank you, HGR CBD, as always, for all the support. Today's Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow, me and Patrick, maybe with a special guest in the evening tomorrow to do a little weekly catch-up. I think the quarterfinals workouts will be out by then, so we'll take a look at them. And then later this week, I'm going to head down to CrossFit Crash to watch the guys duke it out on the Sevon podcast. Taylor, Jason, Dallin, and Colton, some good dudes. I've known them all for a while. That'll be fun to just kind of watch them compete and not have a lot of stress otherwise associated with it. So maybe I'll check in with you guys from there, but the guys will be doing great coverage of that either way. So thank you, Barclay. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. And on behalf of PC who couldn't be here, stay friendly, our friends.